Hello everyone, it's LE Diecast, and as you can see, we've got a bit of a mess here. So a little bit of a history on this. If you've been watching the channel, you'll recognize this is our downtown diorama. This was one of the last dioramas I made before our move, and I don't believe I ever made, or I ever published the how to make this one. I think that one actually got caught up in the move. Right around the time I was finishing this is when we started our move. But anyways, you've seen this in the show. We've done top 25s on this before, and I've shown off the diorama. Well, as I mentioned in the last video, when we moved, the dioramas did come with us, and the other dioramas all made the move. They have their nice little display, which is right up there. It's just off camera. I'll show you that in a future episode. And this is the last of the ones that just got destroyed in the move. This one was in a box that was fitted for it, and it was packed in with styrofoam. I think it got tumbled on its side, or they most likely didn't pay attention to the markings on the side, if you know how moving goes. They might pay attention to what you put in there, they might not. So fortunately, there's no damage that can't be undone. And strangely enough, I'll show you what we're working with here. These pieces here broke off, and you can see there's parts of the ground here. And then this piece also broke off. I'm not going to lift that up, but you can see it had come apart. I have pieced together the larger pieces that I can figure out where they go. I figured that was the boring part, so I did that before the video. Interestingly enough, these trees here, which are probably the most delicate part of the terrain, like these are very, very tiny little twigs. I mean, they would break off easily. These survived. I thought that was really interesting that this whole piece right along here with these very delicate trees didn't get harmed at all, but these buildings that were glued into place, these are actually plastic buildings, they just got wiped out. So I don't actually know how the tumbling occurred, but it's probably fortunate that the damage is as minimal as it is. Most of the damage is back here along the line of buildings, and most of the damage is in the plaster. So, oh, and I should mention, if you're wondering how these pieces, like this little piece of sidewalk here broke off. When I made this diorama, it's on a foam base. It is covered with a layer of medical plaster. That's what I was using at the time. And then I created the sidewalk by using a different brand of plaster. And so what happened is the two plasters never actually bound together, and it would have never mattered for what I use these dioramas for. I don't bang them around too much. But when they broke, what happened is all the little pieces of sidewalk just broke off, but left the base underneath it. So that's fortunate, because I think I can fix that pretty easy. So I think what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to start to piece this together. I will probably fast forward to that piece because it's going to be a lot of the same thing, and then I'll slow down whenever I get to an interesting part of it. But really what I'm doing is I'm just going to glue these together and just get this glued in place, and then probably come back here and explain what I'm doing while the glue dries. So what I'm going to do first is just put these buildings into position and make sure I can line up the broken pieces as much as possible. I'm going to be using this little makeshift tool, which is a syringe with a piece of that's sprinkler tubing stuck on it, and it's very stiff and rigid just from being in the garage for so long. and that will allow me to kind of reach back into those places. I'm going to be using a mixture of Mod Podge glue and water. So it's 1 part Mod Podge, 2 parts water, and then a little bit of isopropyl alcohol mixed into it. And it should seep into all the little cracks and crevices. When you use the Mod Podge glue for this, use the matte glue unless you want it to be shiny. And if you're just starting out, one of the best things that you can do, don't use Elmer's glue or regular white glue. It leaves a sheen and it makes everything look very plasticky. The Mod Podge glue, which really is about the cheapest glue you can get at the store anyways, use the matte. And I pretty much just use Mod Podge matte unless I want something to be shiny. So when you saw me kind of splashing this around, because it's matte, it doesn't really matter what the glue sits on top of. You won't see it. It won't look like you over glued anything. So it's really easy to apply. So you can't see the back of this, and I don't want to turn it around too much and wiggle it around, but basically the back just had a layer on it too, and all I'm doing, because the back's not really going to matter for the fix, is I'm just going to prop up some parts with these little slabs that are left over so the buildings lie straight. So while those back pieces are drying, I'm just cleaning up the rubble from our citywide disaster. And I think we can probably piece together a few of the little details here. So we've got a broken street light. These lights were repurposed from actual working lights. These original little lights on here actually came on at one time, but I've cut the wires. I wasn't that interested in the lights working. And we'll go ahead and fix that with some super glue. I'm also going to use some baking soda to make the super glue dry fast. So that's what this is, baking soda. And I'm using a gel glue for this, but use anything. Any type of super glue, I should say. So you just put it into position and then just sprinkle a little bit of baking soda on it. And good as new. Don't do what I usually do and sprinkle the baking soda over your diorama, because all that wet glue will hold the baking soda, and baking soda does not dry clear nor matte. I'm also going to put this sign back in place. It goes back here. This is the Uptown Bar and Grill sign. This was cut on my plotter, and oops, wrong side. There we go. Use the same thing. Certain types of super glue, especially the gels, will when they dry, they'll discolor the area around them if they are don't have air or can't breathe. So just make sure you don't discolor things. There we go. Uptown Bar and Grill. Be back in business once it's retrofitted. I'm going to go ahead and put the other small signs in place here. Same way. That's clock shot. I guess that's pinch up. Okay, so here's what we're looking at. You can see around over here to the side that damage, that whole back piece behind the buildings has broken off. It won't make any difference in the long run because you never can see it. But you can see underneath the building, right? Let me get something to point with here. Right, like right down there. And that's got to be filled in with plaster behind it. The goal is that the plaster will kind of fill up to that point and make it so we don't see that. But you can see it kind of looks like the buildings are raised off the ground right now, and that's because that layer of plaster has broken off behind it. And right now, that's really the main issue. There's some pieces, like there used to be some stairs there that we'll have to deal with. Make a little block there. Same with that door. And as we come around to the side, behind that phone booth, there's kind of some damage. And then you can see here, right on the other side of that tree, right there, that's a missing sidewalk stone. And we'll pour some self-leveling plaster in there, and then we'll have to paint it to match. And you can see there's some more damage around the edge over here, right underneath there, right there. So I think with the fixes we've done right now, we've got ourselves a pretty good start to our redoing of downtown here. And I think we'll have to wait for that glue to dry before we get to the next piece. So we'll make that the next episode. We'll make this a two-part just so everything's nice and dry when we start. And we should have another round. Next round will be pouring the plaster and painting. I think that's going to do it for today. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.